Thoughts so loud, thoughts so wow that I need to get them out, yeah. Thoughts so loud, thoughts so loud that I need to speak them out, damn. Thoughts so loud, thoughts so pow, make a sound, can't be missing, man. Thoughts so loud, thoughts highbrow, talking shit while you listen now. Like, you ever think about that before? 'Cause I have. What's up, my people, and welcome to the 12th episode of Loud Thoughts with me, your host, True Loudy. We're bringing it to you again, this time a little bit scripted. That's okay, I wrote down some thoughts. I have to do that every once in a while, you know, because there's a lot in my dome piece. There just is a lot. This episode essentially covers what it's like to be an isolationist, as I like to call it, someone who isolates themselves, but also delves into the reasons why I tend to be that particular way. And maybe this resonates with you. Maybe you had a similar experience growing up. I've always felt as if I never really fit in and I never really belonged, not only within the system of school or the system that exists culturally, I guess you could say, the American culture, or just the system that we live in, right? But also within social groups. I never really felt as if I have had a long-term social group that has made me feel safe and at home. I've always felt self-reliant in most of the things that I've done. And so this podcast essentially just talks about my own experiences with that and maybe some of the contributors. So these are just quick thoughts that I had and trying to tie things in together and bring it into a cohesive shape for you guys to digest and put into your ear holes. I hope you enjoy it. If this resonates with you, great, I guess. Maybe not so great, because it's not nice to be alone, but it's also helpful and it's a tool, it's a skill. So without further ado, square pegs. Ever since I was young, I never really fit into any type of mold. I was hyperactive, impulsive, and full of kinetic energy. I also had an extreme personality that stood out amongst most of my peers, if I can say that without sounding like too much of an insane person. I still remember putting a tack on one of my classmates' chairs. It's funny, but not funny. I waited for him to sit down, and he screamed so loudly that everyone heard him and looked at him and they thought he was crazy. But I actually, it was because he sat on this tack. And I remember laughing, but also feeling bad about it at the same time. And I would constantly get into like these terrible schemes and ideas that were completely predicated on my impulse control issues, I guess. And I would follow through full send, whatever it was. And you can imagine my teachers really enjoyed this about me. The funny thing is that I was high in conscientiousness, compassion, and empathy, and I felt the world around me very deeply. I was easily moved by events and happenings in my life. No matter what they were, I would take things to heart very seriously. So I was a sensitive kid. And although it may not have shown in any outward physical manifestation, inside, I was constantly churning. I can remember a time in my childhood, or I can't remember a time in my childhood where I didn't feel overwhelmed by my emotions in some capacity. Everything was just so intense for me growing up. And maybe you could say I was an empath or whatever, but I wouldn't even describe it as that, but maybe that's what it was. Maybe I had that in me at some point. Because I would feel things very deeply. I would get emotionally disturbed by people that were in pain. I could maybe feel other people's pain almost, or this intense relatability for whatever reason. And the funny thing is, even with all this insane internal emotional combustion and these impulse control problems, I was a high-functioning student who received pretty much straight A's all the way up until my 8th grade year, when I first encountered the ugly face of depression, which was brutal and lasted for, up until the present, you could say. I still deal with it. I'm much better at managing it now, but it is still an issue. And, lucky for me, in second grade, I was taken to see a doctor about my impulse control, hyperactivity, and attention problems. And at 7 years old, I was diagnosed with ADD and ADHD. And they promptly prescribed me Ritalin. The year was 1995, and pharmaceutical companies were giving psychiatrists monetary incentives to push this new miracle drug, which was essentially a legal form of methamphetamine, along with Adderall, right? But Adderall, I think, came out like a year later, which I was actually put on. It may not have come out a year later, but it was, that's what I was put on a year later. And I think they were, they just were like, this is a better form of Ritalin. And so I was on that all the way up until I was a sophomore in high school. And during the start of that, I was in second grade, 7 years old. I reluctantly took it every day, embarrassed to be called to the office every lunch hour, 5 times a week, along with a handful of other kids who either had the same problems or some sort of other ailments that required medicine every day. And I remember initially thinking about spitting them out and not taking them at all, but they checked to make sure that you swallowed them. Stick your tongue out. Show me underneath your tongue. Wiggle it around. Let me look in there. They didn't really probe with their fingers or anything, but they definitely checked. They made sure that you took them. So sadly to say, I caved pretty quickly and accepted my fate, my new way of life. I felt even more different now than the other kids, because I had to take this newfound cure-all. And it was like this moment in my life where it was like, oh yeah, there's something wrong with you. You're fucking a damaged little kid at 7 years old. I felt as if something was really wrong with me, And some days I was the only kid in the nurse's office taking this shit. And I thought to myself, at this point, I must be really different. I just must be different than all the other kids. And I continued taking the medicine through grade school and found that it really didn't do as much as far as helping me. I was kind of this out-of-control kid with or without it, too bored for his own good and possibly not even challenged enough at school. And this led to behavioral problems. My earliest memory of getting in trouble was in kindergarten when a teacher wouldn't let another student play with their car. It was reading time. And so she's trying to get him to stop playing with the car. Hey, Martin. His name's Martin in this story. I don't remember his fucking name. Because we weren't even friends. That was just the type of person I was, for whatever reason, type of little person I was. Is that I was like, this is unjust. There's an injustice being done. He should be able to play with his car, even though he was probably being loud and obnoxious. And, the teacher's just trying to keep order. But for me, it was like, I wanted this kid to have a good time. For what I guess, or whatever the fuck, like he should be able to play with it. And so I was reprimanded for being a distraction. And this theme would continue all the way into high school. Really, in high school, I got in a lot less trouble. I was too depressed to cause a ruckus, but I was definitely, I challenged authority quite a bit. And so throughout grade school, there's a couple other memories I have. In second grade, I got kicked out of a classroom when a teacher made fun of me for yawning. Her name was Miss Loretta, and she was black as fuck. She was. I'm pretty sure she was an old black lady in the 90s. So I'm pretty sure she had seen some civil issues occur in her lifetime, some of the civil problems that were going on in the 60s and shit. So she wasn't putting up with a young white boy in her class yawning and shit. And she was a great lady. I mean, I had no problems with her, but she made fun of me for yawning in her class. And I got super pissed because I'm an emotional, sensitive kid. So she's making fun of me for yawning. She's like, you can yawn the roof off over at your house, but when you're in my classroom, she's like, don't fucking, she didn't say fuck, but she's like, don't yawn. And I got mad, and everyone laughed at me. That's the reason I got mad. I should put that out there. I got mad because everyone laughed, and I felt super embarrassed. So I ended up like getting up and pushing over my chair, which ended up falling, and then my desk fell over, and it was like this big event, and I got in trouble. I couldn't go to Chuck E. Cheese at the end of the year. That was how that story ends, in me being deprived of Chuck E. Cheese. And I remember in 4th grade finishing my math problems early, and I'm not even sure if I did them, to be honest. I may have finished them. I remember my teacher being like, "Oh no, I saw you do them. You're fine. Don't worry about it." I was like, "I think I lost my math homework or something." I can't remember what I said. I probably said some stupid shit, but I was trying to get out of trouble because I literally just went around distracting all the other kids by putting a ruler against my crotch, a 1-foot ruler, and just going up to kids and saying, "Suck it," and like thrusting the ruler into their faces, which is hilarious to think about a 4th grader doing that, but it's also really fucked up at the same time. And I remember thinking it was hilarious. That was my part of my impulse control problem. It's like, this will be funny. Like, yes, it's funny in a third person way, but it's not funny if you're the person who's getting the ruler like pushed into their face while they're trying to work on math. Like, it's not funny at all, but I didn't get in trouble for that one. And the funny thing is that particular teacher loved me. I don't think she knew what I was doing in that moment. And that I don't even think I did my math that day, and in 5th grade, I got into an argument with my gym teacher because a girl and I were, getting into it, and she said something about my mom, and I was like, "Oh, hell no." And then I said, "Shut the fuck up," or I said something like witty, but there was a swear word in it, and she immediately went to the teacher. I got in trouble. I had to sit out because, I already had behavioral problems, and this particular teacher didn't like me either. This particular teacher was like not a fan of me. So she just was like, "Fuck you, you're sitting out." And I sat out, and I got mad after 5 minutes because of the injustice, and I said, "You know what? I'm going to just go back into the playground and play." And she got mad at me. She's like, "What are you doing over here? You shouldn't be over here right now. You're supposed to be over there, sitting out, not enjoying any of this recess that we have." And I said, "Well, I think it's unfair that you sat me out, so I don't agree with what you did. I'm going to go ahead and just play anyway." That was not the move. She basically brought everyone inside, which made everyone hate me. And when one girl was like, why is he acting like this? I still remember her voice. "Why is he behaving this way?" And she was like, "'Cause he's a fool." So my gym teacher called me a fool, basically. And after she did that, I heard her say that, and I snapped on her, and I cursed her out and said all these things. And, she ended up getting away with it because she's a teacher and because I was also acting like an insane person. But she was just a bitch, dude. She was just one of those teachers that's just kind of a bitch. And I was just the type of person that couldn't stand for any sort of injustice. So I stood up for myself. I made a stand, and I couldn't go to the end of the year pool party. That was my punishment. And I remember bringing my mom in the principal's office, and she believed what was going on. She believed me when I was like, "This teacher called me a fool," and the teacher denied it in front of the principal. And I remember getting so heated. I was pissed, dude. Not a happy kid. I also had my own desk outside of my 6th grade English teacher's class because I was constantly challenging her and the things she was saying and doing. She would call kids stupid, like to their face, basically, for not doing their homework and shit. And I was like, "You can't just do that. You're supposed to be teaching these kids. Don't call them stupid for not doing their homework." In a roundabout way, I'm sure she, used some sort of colloquialism or euphemism to pass as if she wasn't really being a bitch, but she was a total bitch. And so it started getting to the point where I'd be like, "No, that's stupid." And she would just point to the door, and I knew where my place was. And she kept that desk out there. I mean, she probably kept it out there for 3 months. You know what, though? She got fired a year later because she was a bitch. Guess what? Everyone else found out. So I don't feel that bad about my actions. But you get the idea. There's a fat list of stories that involve me being an impulsive fuck. And the funny thing is that I was still good enough as a kid for the most part. I was a good kid. I never got in horrible trouble. And I wasn't like a piece of shit human, I was actually pretty generous and kind to those I met. I was also very sociable and intuitive during conversations. I just didn't fit into the system of school and the way it was designed. My kinetic energy could not be burned in the way it needed to be. And my mind was always racing with with these crazy thoughts and impulses in my heart with all these feelings. I'm feeling the world so deeply. That's just how it was for me. And, being me was really intense during these formative years with no real outlet or explanation to why I was feeling the way I was or why things were going the way they were. And much less real friends. I had 2 best friends growing up, and one moved away in 6th grade. I tried to make other friends, but since I operate on such an insane person frequency, it was tough to make friends. I also lacked confidence in thinking that people actually liked me because a lot of kids at school did not. And that was probably because of my disruptive behavior. So what are you going to do, right? And that could have also been my own perception. I mean, I'm 32. This was a long time ago. I changed schools 5 times by the time I hit 8th grade, and everyone was already clicked out. I never quite felt a part of any group. It always felt as if I was this outsider, and fitting in wasn't easy. So I learned to develop my sense of humor to mask my self-hatred or non-confidence in order to gain favor with various social groups around me. I used it as a defense mechanism, essentially, and a way in. Like, if you're funny, people like you more, My interesting approach to life and my angle on things was what I thought made me valuable to a social circle. Yet, during grade school, mostly, I was called a spaz, weird, annoying, and most kids that came into contact with me would agree with that during that time period of my life. And the funny thing is, I don't know if it had to do with the Adderall, like what came first, the Adderall and the Ritalin being an amphetamine, right? That's jacking my system up and getting me to act all crazy, or if it was like I was already acting crazy and then I took that and it made it worse, or if it made it a little bit better. Would I have been even crazier if it wasn't for the Adderall? I really don't know. And I never really quite assimilated into any group. And since I really didn't have any hobbies at that point in my life, I just didn't, for whatever reason. I mean, I had sports, but I never really got any friends out of sports. And by the time I was in high school, I became kind of a social ninja, a shapeshifter, right? I could easily move from one group to another and get along with them fine. I kind of just knew how to behave and not be so impulsive. And I think this was greatly due to the number of times I changed schools as well. My personality just developed. I got to see people from different backgrounds and relate to them and talk to them and just kind of test the waters and figure out what works and what doesn't. And in high school, this was around the time I started to do drugs as well. 8th grade, I think I smoked my first pot. I was like, oh, what is weed? Weed sounds cool. I don't like anything at all, and I need to do something, so I guess I'll just start smoking weed. That's a hobby, right? And I never had a group of friends before I did drugs. It was always like my 2 best friends or whatever, and then some kids on the block I'd play soccer with or whatever. And once you start smoking weed, it's like, oh, you smoke weed? Me too. Cool, let's get high together. Oh, we're doing stuff. And really doing stuff was just sitting around or whatever, being high as teenagers. I really didn't have any other interests besides writing. I wrote poetry and lyrics for songs. And I guess I kind of started playing guitar at the age of 14, which is, your freshman year of high school, but I was pretty terrible at it. And I only knew a few power chords. That was probably it. And as you might have guessed, my relationship with all these people that I did drugs with, because it progressed from pot into a lot of other things from the time I was 14 to 19. That's when I did all the bulk of my drugs. And you could probably guess that the relationship I had with these people was really shallow. It never progressed in anything meaningful. I never felt as if I belonged. I still felt as if I was an outsider. And that, again, could be related to the things that happened in grade school and kind of how people felt about me. So I didn't really feel good about myself or have any development of value for myself through any sort of outlet. I never felt as if they really cared about me. And this pushed me further into depression and my isolationist tendencies. Most of my childhood I spent alone, with the exception of those friends that I had, right? Those couple friends. I mean, I can remember spending an entire summer just playing Smash Brothers by myself. Literally would just play Smash Brothers, go out on the block, like run around the block, fuck around as a kid, you know, turn over some rocks, collect some bugs, go play some Smash Brothers. And that was it, man. Like I spent most of my time in my head alone. And I think, I mean, that is just something that happens with certain kids. Certain kids just, that's how they grow up. They grow up more on their own rather than with others. And it was easy for me to slip back into this state of just being alone by myself. I lived with my mom throughout high school because my parents split, and she was in college and working, so isolating myself was super easy, with the exception of doing drugs with the homies on the weekend in the township where my dad lived. So I just take the train on the weekend, go get fucked up, go back home during the week, do all my homework. And so I was living this weird double life where I had high intensity social situations on the weekends with drugs and all these people and partying. And then I would go back to my mom's during the week and I just wouldn't be doing anything except for school and then hanging out by myself. And I actually didn't know what a real friend was in my adult life until I not turned 20. It wasn't exactly when I turned 22, but it was around when I was 22 years old. Because my best friends growing up as kids, they're friends, but it's like your parents kind of dictate most of your relationship, right? So I didn't realize what a real friend was until I met my friend Kevin, who I remember the exact moment when I met him, and I was like, oh, this guy could be he could be cool. Maybe there's a little bit of a bromance here. We'll see what happens. And I moved from the suburbs to Chicago, and him and I hit it off. I met him at my job, and we're hanging out one night, and I got a number from a girl who came into the Panera, the downtown Panera. Ooh, delicious sandwiches and soups and salads. I was working the register. She came up. I was like, what's up, shorty? Here's some free cream cheese. And then she was like, here's that free number. Come hang out. Let's hang out. She was in from out of town. So it was more like hang out with me, show me what's up. So we went to a party, and she was just one of those chicks, man. She was one of those chicks that's like, I solely went out to hang out with her. I didn't want to go to this party and like hang out with all these other people, which is indicative of my social nature. I am sociable, but I am definitely one of those people that's kind of like, I stick to a few people. I don't want to go butterflying around. And that's what she did. And I just watched her flirting with all these dudes and going around and just being that classic type of girl. And I was like, fuck this, I'm going to leave. So I just left without saying anything to anyone. I think I was smoking a cigarette outside, and I was looking at the bus schedule or the train schedule, one of the two. And Kevin texts me, and he's like, dude, or he calls me. He's like, dude, where are you? I'm like, oh, I'm outside. I'm about to leave, dude. I think I'm going to head out. And he goes, well, no, don't do that. I'm going to come with you. And it was that, like, at that moment, I realized, like, oh, people care when you're not around. And that was a connection I had never really made before, is like, oh, people think about you when you're not there, and they care that you're not there, and they'll actually take action to ensure that you feel, good about things that are going on in your life. And so, yeah, we ended up leaving. That chick also that same night tried to hook up with Kevin, and he like shut her down, which I thought was hilarious. Because, like, she just, like, snuck in his room because I was sleeping at his place. And she went into his room and she was all like, oh, my gosh, show me your metal music. Oh, my gosh, show me this, show me that, show me your penis. And he was just kind of like, no, get out of here. And so she had to go out on the couch, like, towards me because he was, like, done with her. He's like, get the fuck out of here. And I just thought, dude, that is some real homie shit. Because I had other homies back in the day in that drug group that if they knew I liked a girl, they would go fuck them. Like, oh, you like this person? Oh, I don't care. I'm just going to go have sex with them. Fuck you and your feelings. And I remember specifically one of my friends, we were all rolling on ecstasy, and he's like, I'm hitting it off with a girl that he likes, basically. And he's like, please don't hook up with her. Please. And I go, okay, all right, man. I'll hang out with her for the night, make sure no one else hooks up with her. I'm like, can I make out with her? And he's like, okay, that's cool. And she wanted to make out too. I'm not making that choice for her. Like, she was feeling me. We were feeling each other. And that's why he was so worried. And I was like, you know what? You're my best friend, in quotation marks. You're my best friend. I got you, dog. And so I just like hung out with her for the night, and we had a great time. But I find out like later that night, or maybe the next day, that he hooked up with 3 people and fucked one of the 3 people. And I'm like, dude, you not only cock blocked me, but you hooked up with someone that I liked in that night, and told me not to hook up with someone that you like. Like, oh, drugs, right? What are you gonna do? So this is what I mean. So when I met Kevin and all these things kind of happened and came together, I was like, oh, that's what a real friend is. Oh shit, I didn't know. Holy fuck. And I hadn't found, or if I hadn't found parkour as well, I would never have met some of the closest friends that I have today. That group is just really accepting. And having a hobby, right? Like I said, having an outlet or a hobby brings people together, makes people more likely to adhere to one another and develop friendships and become friends. So even though I kind of shut out potential friendships through that same avenue of parkour, because I became so hyper focused on the career aspect of it, and I got to move up in the ranks, I got to become the best athlete, I got to do this, I got to do this, like, I did meet some amazing people, and I met a group of friends that became my parkour team, and they're still some of my favorite people in the world. When I moved to Colorado, it was a little bit different because I was so hyper focused on my career. I lost some good opportunities for friendships out there, and I recognize that now. If I hadn't been injured and gone through the things that I went through, I never would have realized the value of relationships outside of all these other things in your life. If I took a personality test, I'd probably come out 51% extrovert and 49% introvert. So it's not as if I'm miserable alone, but it's also not the healthiest thing for me, or really anyone for that matter. I guess, I'm a little bit apprehensive about committing to even friendships with people because I know how disappointing it can be. And I'm working on that personally. I'm the type of person that once you're my friend forever. We're homies to the day we die. If I make that commitment to you, then like it's a lifelong commitment. And being alone all those years when I was younger helped me really value meaningful relationships, as I generally didn't settle, or I generally don't settle currently for the mundane or anything bland in my life. Everything I pursue in my life is about passion and excitement and about feeling. I don't want to live a life bored, or a life that is in the gray, just has that nice gray tint over it. And a lot of what I do in life has to have purpose and meaning for me to be fulfilled, especially in relationships. I can distinctly remember only a few times in my life where I've had a group of friends that felt like home. And a lot of those times, those groups didn't last very long. And I think that's what we're all chasing, whether you're the type of individual who makes lots of friends or has a big group, or has lots of friends that like is in a big group, right? Or you're the type of person who feels most comfortable with a couple of besties by your side, right? It's all about feeling secure and loved for who you are at the end of the day. And friendships are one of those things that should add value to your life, where both people or a group of people are willing to be open and honest with themselves and those taking part in the relationship with one another. We're always much stronger than we are alone. And that's that whole social component thing. Like, we need each other. We're social creatures. And if you're a square peg in a world full of round holes, eventually you'll find another square hole that can accept you for the shape that you are. And whether that's the resonance of your frequency, your ideals, or your hobbies, or mental health problems, there's a place waiting for you somewhere. And that's something that I've had to learn over time myself, is that there is a place for you. It may take you 40 years of your life to find it, but it's out there. The catch is you have to be open to it. You have to be willing to give people a chance and put yourself out there. Or your loneliness, it will remain a constant. Life is happening all around you every day. And in these happenings are people just like yourself. It took me losing all that I worked for to realize your work, hobbies, and interests don't fulfill you as much as your relationships do. They are immense contributors to your overall health. Immense. I can't say that enough. Seek and ye shall find. Even if you have to traverse rocky cliff sides, find yourself in anxiety-producing moments like at a party in a corner all alone, and sacrifice your time. Sacrificing your time is an important part of this development. And the investment is always worth it. Even if you have to round your square peg a bit and someone has to widen their circle hole, at least you can build something meaningful rather than creating friction that causes a fire, or worse, a passover of the port that allows you both to dock your ships and rest your weary traveling heads. See what I did there? There was a little bit of a sexual innuendo. And that's pretty much all we have for this episode, or by we, I mean me, because I'm doing this alone. But you're here, so it's kind of we, right? Together, it is a collective we. We're doing this thing together. It's a togetherness thing. And I know I talked a lot about myself in this episode and my own experiences, but I wanted to really relate it to what it's like to be alone and my own personal experiences, like I said, with social circles and fitting in and being an isolationist, right? And how that's affected my life. Because this is something that I've realized only recently. I've never really delved into why I am the way I am and how it affects my life as far as my relationships until maybe the last couple of years. And it's been very enlightening for me. And this process has kind of helped me evolve as an individual, and to really help me, this process has really helped me just see my relationships for what they are, and be able to be more accepting of people, but also just be more open myself with others and be maybe a little bit more vulnerable. I tend to be more vulnerable in general just because I don't care that much about what other people think about me, but it's definitely helped me be more vulnerable in ways that maybe I've been lacking. And so I'm not saying this podcast is going to be like a revelation for you, but I hope that it was maybe in the way I try to tie things together, maybe it helped you either maybe get to know me a little bit better, but also maybe yourself a little bit better. I don't know. Where I'm just out here shooting the shit, giving my thoughts to you guys. And, I love the support. I'm super appreciative for every person that listens to this podcast, that reaches out to me and lets me know what they thought. I've got my thoughts, but I want to hear your thoughts too. And that's part of the reason I'm bringing on guests and things in my other format, Loud Talks, because I want to know what other people are thinking. And I love picking people's brains as well as my own. I don't like just breaking down my brain. I like breaking down other people's brains and how they function as well. And tying these loose ends together and figuring out how people function the way they do. It's really interesting to me. So, as always, much love. I appreciate y'all for listening. If you ever want to get in contact with me or reach out to me, TrueLoudy at Gmail, TrueLoudy at Instagram, TrueLoudy on YouTube, TrueLoudy on SoundCloud, where I got some music. A lot of it's old, some of it's new. Check it out. TrueLoudy on all those platforms. Hit me up. And as always, may you be blessed through the streets of this life, trying to navigate which way is wrong and which way is right, baby.